Okay, we are recording. Welcome to the evening of Python coding. Today is the 9-year anniversary since the first evening of Python coding meetup. We did it many years ago in Austin, 9 years ago actually. So I'm very pleased that it's lasted that long. Even COVID didn't stop it. We just went online, and now it's also in DC and other places. And today, Alfredo is gonna give us some demo of Ansible, which is not exactly a Python library, but I've seen many Ansible used with in conjunction with Python many times. So, Alfredo, explain what Ansible is and take it away.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Alfredo Valles, and we're going to be talking about Ansible. Ansible is a deployment automation tool, and it's written in Python, so it's not meant for you to import it in your Python code and use it, although you could, I guess, but it would be a very weird use case. But it's meant to accompany or join your project code either in the separate repository or in the same repository in a deployment folder, as we are going to demonstrate here. And it takes care of deploying your code to some production environment, or let's call it a deployment environment, wherever your servers are, or virtual machines or whatever. Okay, can we start with the presentation now, I guess, or Jacob?
You don't have to wait for me.
Okay.
Go ahead. It's your corner.
Right. Okay, so, well, the presentation has started now, I guess. So I have to share my screen, which I haven't. Okay. So can everybody see my screen here, I guess?
Yeah.
Can you guys see the presentation?
Here we go. And now we see the presentation.
Okay. So Ansible demo, here we go. So a little bit about me, as I think is customary in these cases. So yeah, my name is Alfredo Valles Valdez. I've been a backend developer in Python and many projects with Linux for a few years now, maybe many years now. I worked in Europe, I worked in the USA, and I worked back in my country in Cuba many years ago. I have a background in hard sciences. I like to joke that I did machine learning before it was cool. And I'm an avid traveler. And here in the left, you can see a few pictures of places that I've been, and I pretty much very proud of these places and all that. If you need to reach me, I put an email here in the site, which is specific for this the demo. So if you write me there, I will see it's already related to this presentation. You can see my LinkedIn, my GitHub, all of that. So okay, this is the overview of what we're going to be talking about. I won't enumerate all of them, but I want to make sure that you set your expectations. So this is going to be a deep dive in a way, but there are going to be too many details to cover extensively. So you're going to see a lot of things pass in the screen that you may not understand completely. That's okay. That's okay. Focus on the why, not the how, right? So you can understand why the use cases that Ansible can play for you. Let's keep a beginner's mind, that's in the Zen tradition. And for everything that relates to installing the actual packages and all that, refer to the end of the presentation. I would put an annex there. So it can guide you to install Ansible and install Vagrant, which we will be using here too. Okay, so the topic of this presentation is going to be to demonstrate the use of Ansible to automate the deployment of a distributed application. So this is important. It's not just an application that you install in one server or in your personal computer. This is for deploying in a distributed, a complex application that have many components that need to play together. And Here you have the demo code. I already shared the link in the chat, I guess. And you will see that there are two folders. One is called tutor side, which is our application that we want to deploy. I will explain more about the application later. And it's a website made in Django and follows the official Django tutorial. So if you're a beginner and you want to learn Django, maybe this application is good for you. And then the deployment folder, which is a part that we are exercising in this demo, which is everything related to deploying with Ansible, and also to use a tool called Vagrant, which allows to set up a virtual environment with virtualized servers, so we can test our deployment in a realistic environment without actually ruining some server if we make a mistake, right? Okay, so what is Ansible? It's a suite of software to provision, deploy, and manage software in computational infrastructure resources. That could be servers, it could be routers, it could be anywhere that SSH runs. And this is because the main characteristic of Ansible, as compared to our competing solutions like Chef and Puppet, I think, although I haven't used that, but I understand that these other solutions require agents to be installed in the nodes that you want to manage, and this is not the case in Ansible. So in Ansible, you just use SSH, and everywhere SSH runs, and if you can connect to a node, Ansible can run. There are some principles of design about Ansible, but I won't go into that right now because I don't want to bore you with this. You will see it in action, and then if you want to come back to how the principle of Ansible is designed, we can come back here. But let's see it in action first. So what are we going to deploy? We are going to deploy this tutor side application. As I said, it's a Django application. It follows a Django tutorial. So if you come here in the presentation and click in this link, I will just demonstrate. Right, I just click the link and you see this is the official Django tutorial. So if you are learning Django, you follow, I think it's 8 of these, one after the other. And it's also documented. I also documented that in the README of the project. So you have here each of the 8 parts that you have to follow in order to end up with an application similar to the one that I'm including here, right? Of course, I added a few things that are maybe a little bit more, to make it a little bit more understandable, maybe. But you end up with that, basically. So I thought it was a nice detail to have something. So you get 2 for 1. You get to learn a little bit of Django if you want, and you get to learn a little bit of Ansible. So the Django applications have a certain structure. I won't go into that right now unless you guys want to learn more about the Django application, but I will refer you to the tutorial. How about that? And so
Alfredo,
yeah.
Let me just add something about Django. Django is a web framework for Python to create web applications using Django. So for people, the purpose of this tutorial or demo is nothing to do with Django. We just use Django application, so it can be. So we'll demo a deployment of something. Is this correct, Alfredo?
Totally correct, yes.
Okay, this is for the beginners, so don't get the Django confused. Sorry. Yeah.
So if you want to know more about the details of this Django app, come back to this slide and you will see each folder, what it has. I made an effort to more or less document it. And of course, you can always follow the tutorial, which is the official Django tutorial for beginners. And it will, and you end up, if you follow the steps, you end up with this structure more or less. Except a few things that maybe a more expert person will add, like for example, I added shell environment variables with Python.m. Let's not go into that right now, but this is something that is, it's nice to have, let's say. So you have it there for free in case you are curious. Okay, so moving on. Okay, now that we know that we have a web application to deploy, and it's a Django web application, how will we go about that? If let's say if this was a company and this is our product, how will we deploy this? Say to Amazon EC2 or to a set of servers that we have in-house or whatever. So in this diagram, what I'm trying to represent, the blue boxes represent a computer, a host, right? Or a virtual machine, whatever, a computational element. So usually referred as a computer, right? And so here you have the client. I don't know if you can see my mouse. I suppose you can see my mouse moving here, right? Jacob?
You're good.
Yeah, you can see my mouse here. So this is meant to represent the client. So say a user that wants to access our application and basically initiates a HTTP request to our, well, DNS resolution first, but then let's not go there. So anyway, it's trying to access our web page, and then the first thing it hits is a web server. Say in this case is an Nginx server configured as a reverse proxy, it's called. What it means is its function is just to forward the connection to the real server that is actually running our Python logic, if that makes sense. So first you hit the Nginx, and the Nginx based in a set of headers will redirect your application to the application servers that are here in the back. And in this case, I try to represent that they're running the real web server is called Unicorn. There are others, but in this proposal we're using unicorns. It's called a Whiskey server. A web server gateway interface is a protocol that these specific servers use to talk to the reverse proxy that is in the front of it, and basically loads from the disk the Python code and put it in memory, and it serve it and interpret. And then you will see that there is a database cluster that you can access, that is actually where the data part of your application will be stored. And there is also detail about shared, like the static files for your application, for your website have to be stored somewhere, and they have to be accessible as much as well by the reverse proxy, as well as by the application servers. And in this case, the proposed solution would be to use an NFS, network file system, a computer or a system running NFS where it can be mounted from all the systems that are required to access it. So as you see, there is a lot of moving parts here. This can be quite complicated. And if you think that you can orchestrate this with a shell script, I think you're in for some surprises. So the need arises for some orchestration tool or deployment management tool, and this is where Ansible will come from. So it doesn't matter if your application is great, your code is great, if your servers are running out of memory and they are crashing, or if your users are hitting some kind of weird errors, and that you cannot predict or reach a deployment state, then your application is as well as dead in practice, right? So any questions about this?
Go on. If people will see something, they'll ask.
Okay. So, but for this demo, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but if I were to use all this, the logic for Ansible would be too big for implementing that. So I simplified this to an extreme. And we are, for this demo, we're going to be doing something much, much simpler so we can understand it. We're going to have a database server running PostgreSQL, only one database server. And we are going to have only one application server. And the application server won't even have a reverse proxy in the front, which this is not as how you should have it in production. But it's sort of fast enough that you can demonstrate that the application. Sorry, what?
You keep on saying reverse proxy. Explain proxy and reverse proxy, please.
So yeah, a proxy is a software component that basically receive a connection, request a connection. It could be an HTTP connection in this case. It could be other type of network connection. Do something with the connection and usually initiate its own connection to another subnet or area of the network. So the usual use for a proxy would be you have a company and you cannot navigate the internet directly because there are security policies. So you have to configure in your browser, it's called a proxy, to a port, and then all your connections go, for example, a famous one is called Squid. And so you hit that port in that proxy, and this proxy will take care of accessing the internet for you. So it kind of acts as a separation between a subnet and the network and the actual internet, let's say. A reverse proxy is reverse. It acts as a separation from the internet to some resources. So it's kind of from the internet, somebody wants to access a resource, say an application server, and the reverse proxy is taking care of somehow with some logic implementing that, forwarding this connection inside. I don't know if that makes sense.
Perfectly, great explanation.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so, but in this case, once again, we are not using a reverse proxy. We are just hitting our client. We're going to be hitting directly some special web server that comes with Django. It's a development server, and it's not meant to be run in production, but as a demonstration, so you can see how quickly we can set up this with Ansible. And remember, we're going to be setting up 2 machines. In this case, virtual machines, but it's going to be 2 machines. They're going to have security stuff. They're going to have strong passwords, and they're going to have some configuration that makes it not trivial to reach that state, right? And the most important thing that Ansible guarantees it will reach that state in a predictable manner, which is very important for Ansible, right? Every time you execute this thing, you will reach that state. So this is a strong selling point for Ansible. Notice that these 2 servers are going to be running inside what I call here a Vagrant virtualized area or something like that. It's going to be a virtual network where our 2 virtual machines are going to be running inside our machine. So our local machine is going to run this for us. We could have done this in Amazon EC2. We could have done this with servers or with Docker even, but it's simpler to use Vagrant. I see this. People use Vagrant a lot for this kind of test that have to do with deployment, kind of simulating the deployment environment that you want to target as production. And so you create a little simulation in your virtual machines that approximate what you will find in production. And you make your test with Ansible there. And when you are confident that everything works, then you move to the real thing, right? If that makes sense. So let's talk about Vagrant briefly. For anything that has to do with installing Vagrant, go to the annex of this presentation. So I won't waste your time right now with that, but it's in the end of the presentation. So I'm confident you can at least get started if you want to install Vagrant. It's really simple if you use Linux. Not so simple if you use Mac, but possible. I did it in Mac, so I included some documentation in the README or pointer to way to do that. And our Vagrant file is already prepared for you to run it in Mac. Now, in Windows, I have no idea. I'm sorry, I don't use Windows. So I suppose it's easy and I suppose it runs, but I cannot test it myself because I don't have any Windows machine at hand. Anyway, moving on to Vagrant. So the only thing you need to run this Vagrant environment is one file. And this file is called Vagrant file. And this is the location of this file. We will see it briefly. But the most important thing about this file is that you will be declaring an application server, which is a virtual machine with this IP, this host name, and a little name, that internal name that we use to refer to it. And the same thing for the database server. Let's take a quick look right now. We jump to this. Let me close a few things here. Okay, so this is what you get. This is the directory when you clone our repository. So here you have an application that we want to deploy. Let's not go there right now. And this is the deployment folder. And right now we're talking about Vagrant. So this Vagrant folder that is here deals with just spawning these virtual machines that are going to simulate a production environment that we want to hit when we are ready, right? And the only thing that you need to care about is this Vagrant file. Don't mind too much the details. I did some work here to prepare it for Linux. It was really easy. For Mac, I had to do a few things. So but it's ready for you. So all you have to do is to use it. And the important thing in this file is here you have the definition of the servers. This is the application server. It's really simple. As you see, there is not much to it. I commented out a second server in case you want to play and you have a lot of memory in your host and you want to spawn a second application server, and maybe see that you can actually easily adapt Ansible to have two application servers if you want to. But in this demo, I commented this for simplicity. And here you have the database server. So I hope this is clear for everybody. Is there any question about this? No? Okay. So moving on then. Let's go back to the presentation. So the Vagrant command is really simple. Mostly you're going to need only these commands that are here documented. Don't worry about that right now. I'm going to...
Alfredo,
yes.
we have a question about the Vagrant is it's kind of a virtual machine manager, something like that. It creates virtual machines. Is this someone connected to Ansible directly, or you just chose that because it's easy for you?
Okay, no. So Vagrant is not connected to Ansible. And let's say Vagrant is an easy way for me to show to you what Ansible does, right? So Vagrant is a way for me to create quickly some servers that we can connect as if they were, for example, in Amazon EC2. And you can see the logic happening there as if it were in any server all around, in any solution, in DigitalOcean, in the in Amazon EC2, or even in your own virtualization solution if you want to take care of setting up the virtualization solution yourself. Now, Vagrant is not itself do not provide the virtualization. Under the hood, Vagrant uses some virtualization solution like VirtualBox or the VMware player. So, for example, in Linux and Windows, you will use Vagrant already will install, or you should install already VirtualBox. But in Mac, the only one that works right now, if you have Silicon Mac, Apple Silicon, the only one that works right now is a VMware player. But again, this is not Ansible. What I'm trying to, this is a demo, so I'm trying to demonstrate what Ansible can do, and Vagrant is the easiest way for me to have some servers for you to see what it does. Is that good?
Perfect.
Okay. So let me just demonstrate to you. Maybe this will become clear if I show you. So I have here three. Let's grab in the middle. So I have here three simple terminals, and this terminal is located where I have the Vagrant folder that we were talking about before. So if I ls here, you will see the Vagrant file that we had before. And this other in the right column, what I have is just our Ansible playbooks. So let me bring the full path. So you see that we are inside the deployment folder of our code base. And inside that, we are inside the Ansible playbooks, which we are going to explain that what happens here in a second. But right now, let's focus on the Vagrant side of it. And you can see Vagrant status. So if I run this, it tells me that, look at that, we have two machines, the two machines that I show you in the definition of the Vagrant file, and they are both power off right now. Why? Because I don't want you to make, this takes a little while to initiate the virtual machine, so I already initiated them for you. Provision them is a term. And they are already provisioned, and they also have applied the latest Ubuntu packages, updates. Why? Because it takes too long. So if I had to put you through seeing that in action, it would take a long time. It takes like 10 minutes to apply all these packages from these images that we use for this Vagrant thing. So the other important thing is that I can power off this thing. So for you, if you want to follow this, all you have to do is come here. You will do Vagrant status, and you guys will show here the machines are not provisioned. And all you have to do is to come here and say Vagrant up, Vagrant up. And you wait a little bit. In my case, it's going to go a little bit faster because, as I said, I already have the machines were provisioned already before, so it's piggybacking in all the steps that I did. But you will see something very similar to this. It just will take a little bit longer. And after you finish this, you will end up with two virtual machines that are running, and that you can accessing the IPs that we saw before, right? And you don't have to use the IPs most of the time because you can actually use the names that we declared in the background file. So let's wait a little bit. It's about to finish, I believe. So what I'm doing right now is demonstrating to you why Vagrant is useful. So again, this has nothing to do with Ansible. It's the easiest way for me to show you how Ansible works, to create a deployment environment for you to test Ansible, right? And remember, you can always do that in your own machine. So you don't depend on me. If you do background up, you will end up, as long as you have Vagrant installed and everything is right, you will end up with the same thing that I have here. So predictability is the name of the game. So if you do SSH, so you can do Vagrant SSH and the name of one of the machine, let's say do DB. Remember, we have a DB and an application server. So I will come here, SSH one. So so in the top left, in the left top, we have login into our virtual machine that will at some point have the application server for our website. And here in the bottom, we are in the virtual machine that will have our Postgres database. Right now, it doesn't have anything. If you run, yes. What I'm going to do right now, for those who are not familiar with Linux, I'm going to list all the processes that are running in the machine. Although with this big font, it's not easy to see, but there is not much running. All these things are internal Linux things. You see there is not much happening in this machine. And the same thing here in the top. So not much happening here, right? Like our session, the SSH session is here. And that's it, our bash that we are using, and our last command was that. So again, this process that you see between brackets are internal Linux things that refer to the internal workings of the machine. So nothing here of concern us, right? So you will see how with Ansible this thing will come alive quite fast, right? So I will leave this login here. Coming back to, so you see, you can play with Ansible, and you can reload the virtual machine, you can halt it, and then restart it again with up. You can do a few things, but basically it just works, which is the beauty of it, right? Any questions about this before we move to the actual Ansible part?
Quick question for you, I think.
Yeah.
How many boxes Vagrant allows to really use for Ansible demo or something like that?
Well, Vagrant have no limit in how many boxes you can have, as far as I know. Look, I haven't actually explored the limits of what is possible, but I think you will be limited by the RAM in your machine. First, that so if we go to the sorry, if we go to the Vagrant file, you will see that at some point you can actually configure the memory of your virtual machine. So, and you see that for both VirtualBox and VMware, I just configure a very small, just half a gigabyte of RAM. For this is okay. Remember, these virtual machines are running very little. In more complex deployments, you will need to have more RAM. I'm talking about the RAM in your local machine. Remember this, or your local host. These virtual machines are going to be running in your local host, right? So again, Ansible doesn't need this. You can run Ansible against any machine anywhere in the world. This is just for me to be able to demonstrate to you that how Ansible works in a predictable way, right? And you can in a second you can have the same servers that I have, because they're virtual servers. If you follow this with Vagrant, does it make sense?
Great, I think I got it.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you well.
I got it.
Okay, great. Any other questions about Vagrant?
No, go ahead. You explained well what's going on. You're using Vagrant just because you have to demonstrate from your own machine, and the deployment has to happen on some other machine. So you kind of create a virtual machine to do it.
Yeah. So notice, if I say that I have 3 servers, or in Amazon EC2, And I can show you, yes, I can use Ansible with this server, but I guarantee you, I won't give you access to all of you to the 3 servers, right? So nobody will. So, this way, you actually can have your own servers to play with in the exact excuse me, the exact way that I'm demonstrated to you, you can use in your own machine. So this is so in this way, there is no, oh, it doesn't work in my machine, right? It will always work in your machine as long as you manage to, run the Vagrant machine, the Vagrant software. So the important thing for deployment is predictability. So we are trying to achieve predictability. And so therefore, it's very important that you test your deployment against a deployment environment that is equal for you and for me, right? Or for anybody that wants to follow this step. Does it make sense?
Perfect. You want to be reproducible.
Okay, so let's move to the organization of Ansible project. So, okay, so this was a Vagrant. So once again, this is inside deployment, Vagrant. So this just a tool for us to demonstrate. Let's actually look at the Ansible part. Can you see the left here in this tree? In this, I'm going to assume yes, right? All of you can see here in the left.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, let me show you the presentation, because I made an effort here to describe at least some of these folders, right? Again, I'm not going to go one by one because it will require too long, but let's say the most important folder here is the inventories folder. Let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at it here in the actual. So the inventories folder contains all our inventories. In this case, we only have one inventory. Inventory means the deployment environment that you want to deploy. Sorry for the many repetitions, but what it means in practice is that an inventory is a declaration of your hosts, meaning which servers you want to deploy, and a group of variables that apply to this deployment. So, of course, if you want to deploy a complex application, you need to say which servers you want to use, what IP they have, as well as other variables that may be coupled with the server itself. And then you want to declare some variables that has to do with the deployment. Name of a user, that the deployment user, password of that this user has, a directory password you want to deploy, things like that, right? So let's start by the. So remember, we are looking at the inventory. So you can have many inventories. Say, for example, in this case, I have a Vagrant inventory. So this inventory deals when I want to, I use this inventory when I want to deploy to Vagrant. But I could as well have here another folder with looking very similar to this one, only with a different name, that will, for example, say EC2, for example. So I know that I have a group of servers in EC2 and I want to deploy the same Ansible logic. I want to deploy it in a completely different deployment environment with other hosts, but following the same methodology, right? So I hope this makes sense. By the way, this is not a universal Ansible thing. You can organize your inventories as you want. And usually when people start explaining Ansible, they start by a very simple organization. But I wanted to show you a more realistic organization that you would use for a more complex project, right? You can always find easier toys, example of using Ansible for not very useful things. But this is a very easy, flexible, extendable configuration that you can use if we understand what we're doing here, right? So let me take a look at the hosts. So in the inventory, the most important file is this host file. Sometimes it's called host.ini because this is an ini format, meaning it's a configuration format. So if you have used any traditional Linux software, you will see, or service, you will see that the application, the configuration looks like a very simple text file with sections. And here you have sections that are like this between brackets. And basically, it's an INI is the name of it, like INI. So I don't remember why INI stands for, but I can tell you it's the basic configuration text files for most applications. And so in this host file, you first declare your hosts, meaning what machines are you going to use. And in this case, we have two machines. We have the app1, our application, excuse me, our application server, and our DB server. Org stands for orchestration. So don't mind this. This is an internal name that we're going to be using when we need to refer to this machine. And the Ansible host part is basically declaring the IPs of this machine. How do I know the IPs of this machine? Because I have it in my background file, right? So I know that I prepare my background file with these IPs, so I know the IPs that the machine has. And so if I had servers in EC2, I would come here, well, not here, I would duplicate this folder, I would copy this folder, change the name to EC2, and I would come here and change the IPs of these servers to whatever IPs my EC2 virtual machines have in the cloud. And then, of course, I have to change the name, probably the name, or I don't have to change even the name, right? But I could change the name that identified these servers too. Okay, so apart from declaring the hosts that form this inventory, you also can declare groups, which is these sections here. And so we have a group of application servers, we have a group for database servers, and don't mind the other groups, I will explain that. Right now, the groups only have one machine, but if I had, for example, if I had another application server, I would come here and I will, let's suppose this application server is 2. By the way, you can test this yourself if you go to the background file and you just uncomment this and do background up again. And this background will have, immediately you have another virtual machine with this IP, and then you can test Ansible with that second application server. And you can see that it works too. But for simplicity, so if we had the second application server, I would come here and add it here. So sorry, not here, to our application group, right? So we have an application group. The groups are application servers, and we have a database group. That groups are DB servers. So if you have done ever a complex deployment, you know why we need several application servers, because sometimes application servers get overwhelmed by the number of connections, and you can do what is called horizontal scaling of the application, right? But in this case, let's go back to how things were. This was just for me to illustrate to you basically that the host server, sorry, that the host file is very extensible, and you can have as many servers as you want in as many groups as you want. But the groups is what really describes the components of your application, right? You have an application servers components, and you have a database server component, which can have more than one machine in it. And then you have what we call multi, or you can change the name, sorry, the name here you can change. So in this case, we call it multi. This is a group of groups. It's a pseudo group. They call it an Ansible. No, you don't have to worry about that. All you have to know is that whatever groups you put here, you can refer to that as multi, for example. You can also refer to them as the special group all, because Ansible, but you don't have to declare that. Ansible always provide an all group for you to refer to all our servers. And notice a very interesting thing. You can actually declare some variables only for a group. So in this case, I declare for the multi group of groups. So I could even have some servers in some area, for example, that has some specific SSH private key to connect to the server, or a different username or things like that. So these variables that are here refer only to the connection to the server. This is not the place to be adding many variables. Variables that you put in the host file refer only to the minimum thing you need to connect to the server via SSH. Once you connect to the server, every other logic need that you need to refer in variables, you put someplace else. So where is this other place? So we are finishing with the inventory file. So the inventory file is the host file. So now, apart from defining what machines constitute your deployment group, you need to also have some variables that describe what you're doing. So here you have, don't be scared about that. This is really very simple. This is a YAML file. It's a YAML format. It's not a longer INI like a host. The host is a much simpler format. This is a YAML format, which is a more structured format. Very simple, but and you will see, I won't go into too much detail here, you can always go to, if you search in Google Ansible YAML syntax, and you will reach this beautiful page where they actually go through what YAML is, what you can do with it. But it's a very simple format, very human readable. So coming back to this, but you want to see that I call your attention to the fact that you can have comments, you can have expansion of variables. So in this case, we are expanding the variable Postgres.min user, which is this one, and you have even expansion of very complex data structures. Let's forget about this. This is something that Ansible provides. I will explain later some of it. But you know, you have not only variables with the static values, but you also can expand the variables to something more, to some values that either Ansible provides or referring to other variables in your file of variables, right? And notice that this variable file is inside the folder called group bars. It's like that because it applies to the group all. I already said that there is let's call it a magic group that Ansible create that is called all, that applies to all your servers in your inventory. But if you wanted to separate it in groups, say a group of variables for the DB group and a group of variables for your application group, you could create here so for example, db.yaml, and copy this file there and modify it only for the DB. And you could create another file here on the group bars called app.yaml. And there you copy the variables that are relevant for the application server. Usually, you can get by with only one group bars, one file that defines all your variables. So this is what we did here. And again, there are simpler ways to set up Ansible. If you go to any tutorial, they will start by a much simpler setup. I just wanted to show you a realistic setup that you will use. You can take this setup, this project structure that I'm showing you, and use it for a very simple example like this one, or use it for hundreds of machine deployment, and it will work. So this is I'm kind of proud of this arrangement. I know it's a little bit harder to understand, but I think you can scale it to many deployments environments, many hosts, and it's really, as I see it, a much more dynamic and much more extensible way to use Ansible. So here in this talk, we're diverging from what you will find in a usual Ansible introduction, right? You won't find this type of organization usually. I documented where you can go if you go later, I documented, so for this inventory layout, there is some documentation, and in Ansible, some discussion about it, and you can find it here in this link when we're talking about the inventory file. Again, I already covered the inventory file. It looks like this. You already saw it, and I already covered the Ansible variables file. This all YAML. I hope it's clear that the inventories, this curly bracket is meaning to represent that you can have there many inventory folders, right? You can have one for Vagrant, like in our case. You can have another one for AWS servers. You can have another one for DigitalOcean virtual machines. You can have another one for your in-house servers. And all of them will live, all of these folders will live inside the inventories, and all of them will have the similar structure. They all will have a group bar, so we have the old YAML, there we have the host declaration, and your changes will be minimal between these inventories. And later you can see that you can point to which inventory you want to use, and you will be deploying right to that group of server deployment environment, I like to call that. Is that understandable? Am I making sense here?
You're explaining very well for beginners. I'm quiet.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
There is one, okay, I lied a little bit. There is a little bit more complication to that, and it comes to the secrets. So, okay, so yeah, it would be very beautiful if we could put all the variables in our all.yaml here, but unfortunately, some passwords, and you can see here, I documented this as overridden by bars.secret, underscore secret. So Ansible has support for encrypted files for you. So you can actually commit them to your GitHub without worries. They will be encrypted with high security, so you don't have to, all you have to do is remember your password, obviously. Otherwise, you're out of luck. For this demo, I selected the password Ansible Rocks. Obviously, you never publish your password in a real project, but in this case, it's a demo. So if you want to follow my steps, please remember the password is this one. So let me demonstrate to you, and this is the way that you will actually use it. So yes, the Ansible, this is how you run an Ansible playbook, and this is how you -I for inventory. This is how you point to the inventory that you want to use. For example, the Vagrant deployment environment, or AWS if we had that configured, prepared here, or whatever in deployment environment, right? So you point your inventory, you say my inventory is this one, these are my servers, and this is what the logic, the playbook that I want to deploy, the tasks that I want to execute to deploy the same. But then you have to pass this ask a vault pass. If you don't pass this, Ansible would fail with an error telling you, hey, I don't know, I cannot decrypt some variables, right? Let me show you how we can see this variable. So if we go here, so this would be inside vars. And again, nothing here is set in stone. You don't have to put it here. This is just my organization that I'm proposing to you as a good organization for not only a demo, but even for very complex deployment. So if you ever want to do a real deployment with something in production, you just have to take the same scaffold that I provide here, change minimum things, and you will scale to hundreds, thousands of servers if you want to. And so let's take a look at this vars underscore vault. And so you can see that this is encrypted with this algorithm. So nothing to do here. If you want to actually see what is inside, I documented here some ways to use this Ansible vault as well as some useful links if you want to learn more about it. But let's do a quick. So the file is in vars. So this is our file, and so if we want to use it, if we want to see the content of it, there is a sub command or a command that is part of the Ansible suite called Ansible Vault. And that you use, for example, you can say view and point it to this file. And of course, it's asking me for the password. If I don't provide the password, it tells me invalid password, of course. So remember the password I documented in the slide is Ansible Rocks. And here you have it. Suddenly, this scrambled thing makes sense, and you see why we couldn't include this in our all the YAML variable files, group vars. Why? Because we cannot commit this to GitHub. If you commit this to GitHub, you would be committing the original sin of most people beginning to put serious information in GitHub. So yeah, it would be. It's really incredible how much secrets you can learn from GitHub just by scanning a lot of repositories and seeing what people left there for you. And everybody does it. Even Google did it recently. There is a big revelation about secrets in Google internal algorithm for the search engine. And it was just committed by mistake. So don't do that. Use something to encrypt your secret files. Ansible already has a tool for you, so use it. So, excuse me?
This is something very important for beginners. Never, ever, ever put Ansible, not Ansible, sorry, passwords in code. Never, ever, never put them on GitHub. Even if you really want something, the workarounds, and Alfredo is showing you something very important, like some sort of way to avoid still having passwords, but not putting them and not saving them. So sorry for the interruption, but beginners should know that. It's a very basic thing.
Yeah, if you don't want to use Ansible to deploy your application, you can install it anyway. Ansible is a Python package. By the way, you can install it with pip. And by the way, in the annex of the presentation, you will see more details about how to install Ansible in case beginners want to see details. But if nothing else, you can use it to encrypt the secrets in your application or in your code and submit it to GitHub without worries. It's tested. It's how they say in English, trial and tested or something like that. So believe me, it's well tested. And if this encryption were broken, a lot of people will have serious problems. So your secrets would be safe with Ansible. But if nothing else, you can use Ansible Vault for solving the problems of keeping secrets. But well, moving on, the Vault is just one piece of what we are explaining here. So it's not our main. This is just passing by for you to understand what is going on. Now we are moving to the main component of this. I recognize it's a little bit, there is a lot of moving parts here. So if you feel a little bit confused, that's okay. But the playbook file is the most important part of Ansible. And this is where you put what is called your tasks. And your task is, let's say, the unit of what you need to accomplish, right? So a playbook is a collection of tasks and a little bit more of tasks than tasks. But as a first level abstraction, you can say a playbook is just a grouping of tasks. And each task is just something that you want to accomplish to deploy your application. And here in your, I just added, sorry, let me just put this full screen. So you see that the playbook is a YAML format. And you know it's a YAML format, by the way, because of these 3 dashes in the beginning of the file. Why is it like that? I don't know. It's a YAML format. But if you see 3 dashes in the beginning of the file, it's a YAML file. And it's really readable, as you can see, although it has some gotchas, but let's not go there right now. But you can see it has like big sections. So for example, in this case, you are declaring hosts. So what is this host DB? So this is saying that this whole playbook will apply to the host DB group, to the DB group. Remember in our inventory file, we had a section also called group of servers that was called DB. It could, in our case, only have 1 server, but it could have many more servers. So this Ansible playbook will target any server that you put in the DB group. Every task from now on, down in this file, will run against every server that is in the DB group. And you also have variables that you could declare, although in this case, the var section is empty. The playbook already received the variable from the group variables that we showed, the all.yaml file that we were showing before. This variable will already be present for you here for all the tasks to happen. So, but if you wanted to add variables locally, you could also do in this var section. There are pre-tasks, as you see here. Doesn't matter, it's just tasks that you need to run before the main tasks. And there are handlers, I will go to that a little bit later. Handlers are like little tasks that have to run as an event. Once something happened, and if some condition happened, you want to make sure that the handler is called in the end of the playbook, usually. So it's just, let's call it the handler is a task that happens in some conditions, right? But the main part of the playbook is the task part. And every time you see a dash, it's like a list. A dash is at the same indentation level in the file, indicate a list. A group of, without a dash, indicates something like a dictionary in Python, if that makes sense. So, you can see the specification of an example of a YAML, but without confusing you too much, inside the task section, everything that has a dash here and usually have a name is a task. This is the definition of a task, right? So this first task here basically says that the service, the PostgreSQL service, have to be enabled and running. And so you notice that you don't say how it has to be enabled and running. You don't say to Ansible, hey, you have to do this, you have to touch this service. You only declare the state that you want the server to be in, and Ansible take care for you to get to that state or fail in a predictable manner, right? So this is very important for Ansible, predictability. And they also make a big fuss about something called idempotence. Idempotence is a fancy name for no matter how many times you run an operation, it always reaches the same result, right? And in mathematics, an idempotent operation, it means that you can apply it all the time to over and over and over to the result from the operation before, and you get to the same result, if that makes sense. So Ansible task must be idempotent. Don't have to be, they don't have to be, but you should strive to make them idempotent. If you use Ansible modules, like in this case, for example, every time you see this Ansible.builtin, something is an internal Ansible model. Ansible comes with many modules, and some that you can that are called collections that you can import and easily. And for example, in this case, Ansible.builtin.service is just a module that Ansible brings that allows you to manage any service in Linux. So you have a PostgreSQL service, and you can manage it with this. And all you have to say is that the state that you want to have in the end is started, and that you want to have it enabled. And Ansible take care of making everything in Linux, regardless of what Linux it is, which is very important. It doesn't matter if it's Ubuntu or Fedora or any other Linux system. Ansible will make sense to, because different Linux system may have different ways to use configure services, right? But Ansible already takes care of that for you, of this variation. You only have to say what state you want, and he will get there for you. And in the second operation that I'm showing here, in the second task, sorry, you have the community.postgresql.postgresql.db. It's called a collection. So this doesn't come with Ansible by default, but it's super easy to install in your application and your Ansible with a tool that Ansible has that is called Ansible Galaxy. Let's not go there, but it's super easy to import these things. No problem about that. And I put an example in the annex of this, how to actually use this with Ansible Galaxy in the annex. So I hope this makes sense. I'm going to go a little bit, if we have time, I'm going to go a little bit more in detail when we run these playbooks. Any questions?
Take as much time as you want. You're explaining well to beginners. I love it. Thank you.
Okay. So, so every time that you start with Ansible, the first thing they show you is these ad hoc tasks. This is not the way you use Ansible most of the time, but it's a nice trick to have. And I will show you a few things you can do with Ansible, even if you don't have preparing very well your playbooks or anything. You can do a few things with Ansible if you just declare your host file, and you don't even need the variables at this point. You only need the host file. So I'm going to just, in this case, we are going to just ping our machine. So remember, you're going to end up with, when you are starting to deploy something, you have a number of servers that are going to be somewhere. In this case, they are in Vagrant virtual machines inside your local host, but they could be in EC2, they could be in internal servers inside some bare metal inside your organization. They could be anywhere. And so you want to make sure that these servers are reachable at this point, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to ping these servers, and we are going to say Ansible -I, because we need to declare the inventory that we're targeting. I could have put here the host file. I could do this and it will work, because this is a host, the inventory file is a host file. But it's kind of like an Ansible, let's say, well, it's a convention in Ansible that is called host. So you don't even have to say that it's in the host file. And so I would say, okay, my inventory is in this folder, Vagrant Ubuntu. These are the servers that I want to ping. I will, at this point, I would say what servers I want to target. I could put a server name here, like app1 or something like that. But I'm going to say to all the servers, and I'm going to use -m for module. It's an Ansible module. It's the same modules that we saw here before. So, for example, when you see this Ansible.builtin.service, that's a module if you see it here when I'm moving my mouse. So now we're using another module, but in this time we're just calling it from the command line. And let's see what happens if I run this. Notice that in this case, you didn't even have to provide the password for the encryption, because in this ad hoc way to call Ansible, you are really not using the variables. You are not loading the variables. You're just loading the inventory. Okay, so it would be even clearer if I just put it like this, I guess. So you are targeting the host file, so that declares what servers you have, and that's all. And then you run this, and let's take a look at the output a second. So you can see that the answer for a ping is a pong, as is traditionally the case. But also you can see that we got something more. Sorry. First, notice that we got the answer from the two servers that we have in our inventory. If we have more servers, if we had 100 servers, they will all respond like this in parallel in a way. So we will talk about the parallelization or the synchronicity a little bit later. But notice that there is an Ansible fact, and this thing, this core, apparently this core that we have an in Python interpreted here. And this is inside the node that we are targeting. So by the way, in Ansible, your local machine where I'm running this is called my master node or control node. And the machines that you are targeting, that you want to deploy on, they're called target nodes. So the control machine or the control node is my machine, and the target node is in this case, our background virtual servers, right? And so this response came from inside this background virtual server, and it discovered inside this machine that there is this Python. This is the first thing it has to discover, because Ansible is running Python. So it has to always have a Python interpreter there. But most Linux systems already come with a Python pre-installed. So he will always find it no matter what it is, let's say, most of the time. And so coming back to our ad hoc demonstration, so I hope that you see that this is kind of cool, that you can ping many servers at the same time, but let's move to something a little bit more interesting. Let's see if we can see how long has this machine been up. Uptime is a command in Linux or in Unix in general that allow you to see how long the machine has been running. And -p is for pretty, for giving me a succinct output, otherwise it brings a little bit more difficult to interpreting. So what we are doing is almost the same as the time before, but this time we're using a different command, an Ansible module. This Ansible module is called command, and it allows you to run commands inside the target nodes. And this command would be uptime, and -a for argument for your command, right, for your module. And so if we run this, and voila, you see here that each machine answered very fast, and they said that they have been 37 minutes up, 36 minutes up. So, and you can do much more things with this. You can run any command that is available inside the system. For example, let's check our free disk space in every mounted file system. Don't worry if you don't know details about Linux, about the file system in Linux. This is just meant to show you that we are able to access any command inside the server. So you don't have to know the details about df for disk free in Linux. But here you can see, basically, you can interpret how many each partition in the Linux system have. And we can see the memory. So now I want to see how much RAM memory I have free in this system. And for idiosyncrasy in Linux, you have to look at here. This is how much free space you have. And actually much more, because, well, let's not go there, but actually this is how much memory you could actually use in these systems, right? Despite the fact that it says free only this, is because it's caching aggressively. But I hope you can see the usefulness of this. I mean, if you have 100 servers, you can very quickly get an answer for the 100 servers at the same time, right? Let's do something a little bit more convoluted here. And again, don't worry if you don't understand the details on Linux. So in this case, I'm using a different module. Also in the same vein, we're running a command, but in this case, this command is complex and we need shell capabilities. So the command module in Ansible only allows you to execute a command, not a shell. So the command won't be running inside the shell. A shell like bash, like TSH, CH, I think it's called, like, there are many shell in Unix world, and the usual one is called bash. So it's the one that I'm running here. It's the same program that runs inside a terminal. When you have a terminal here, I have a bash running. It could be any other shell, but it's a shell command. And in this case, we want shell capabilities because what I want to do here, again, module, Ansible module shell, arguments to this Ansible module, whatever I put here between these single quotes. And I want to use a sudo to a scale privilege, call the cat, because I want to look at the very privileged file in the system, which is the sudoer file. The sudoers file is where it declares who has administrator's privilege. Who can scale privilege using sudo command? And whatever the answer of this whole file, I will send it to via pipe. Pipe is a shell facility. I want to send it via pipe to the grep command, and the grep command in the system will grep or filter for the vagrant word. And so let's see what happens if I run this. And so here you have it. You have each of the machine responding to, hey, you have yes, this line exists. So this is what vagrant, grep vagrant literally filters only the whatever lines in the file have vagrant included. And in this case, this is what you need to create, what you need to put in this file to make a user, in this case, vagrant user, to execute anything without password as a sudo thing. So if I remember this, in the left side, these two shells that I have here running are SSH into the virtual machine that I have. If you remember, I SSH here with vagrant, SSH and the name of the machine. And so if I were to put this, so let's see if everybody understands what we're doing here. If I were to execute this inside my node, the node, remote node, it could be Amazon EC2 running machine. It comes out with the same output that we have here, right? Nothing well, except the Linux has some highlighting, but forget the highlighting. This is not part of the output. So you see, this is what in this case we are receiving the DB machine, and we are inside the DB, as you see here, as user vagrant. So this user was able to scale privilege and pipe that to grep command and successfully. So what I want to show you is that the modules in Vagrant has a lot of versatility, and in this case, you have a full shell. Well, this might not be too impressive, but I wanted to show you. Let's jump to this late one. I'm skipping this one because I should have put in the last. But let's install a package. So in this case, we're going to be installing a package, and this is inside this whatever host we have in our inventory. And notice that here in the example, I have put only one machine, but I will target all my machines. So in this case, I am using by virtue of specifying -m module, Ansible module. There is an Ansible module called package. Excuse me. And this module abstract away any package manager in Linux. So there are package manager, like in this case, if you use Ubuntu or any Debian derivative, you will have the apt package manager. If you use Fedora, derivative of Red Hat operating system, I think something is called YUM, Y-U-M, package manager. Doesn't matter. There are many package managers in Linux, each for different distribution, what is called Linux distribution. But in Ansible, you don't have to care about that. If I had, in this case, I have two Ubuntu machines, but I could have one Ubuntu, one Fedora, another one run Red Hat, another one running, I don't know, something more exotic like Gen 2 or other types of Linux system. And even sometimes not a Linux system, even a Mac, for example, although in practice, nobody ever deploys to a Mac in the cloud. But anyway, you could have much more. But in this case, it abstracts away details about package manager in Linux. And we would try to install, in this case, a package called Links. This is a very old package that provides something that almost nobody ever uses. It's a text-based browser, web browser. Almost nobody uses that anymore, but it's guaranteed that it's not going to be present by default. So this is why I picked this. So if you go here and you do, so this is Debian way to query the database of installed packages. So if I look for links, and I'm going to put an asterisk, you see that it shows something, but it's UN in the beginning, says uninstalled. So this package is not installed here. So, and the same here in the top. If I were to, so again, if you don't know to do this, I'm just trying to illustrate to you what is going to happen, right? So this package Ansible module will take care of saying, oh, I'm in Ubuntu machine, is the node an Ubuntu? Then I know I have to execute apt package manager. Oh, am I in a Fedora machine? Oh, I know I have to execute John package manager, right? So it takes away a lot of complexity for you. So let's see what happens if we execute this. So it takes a while because remember, it's actually installing things inside the virtual machines. And so you see a lot of output here. You will recognize if you use Linux, this output. This is the output is installing the package. So this is a standard output. Or every task or every operation in Ansible captures always your standard output and your standard error. So you can always access this thing. So, but let's go back to the machine. So for example, if I repeat the same command as before, and voila, now you can see that there is now I in the beginning is for install, right? And so before there was nothing installed with this name, but now you have packages installed and here too. So I hope, my hope was to illustrate that Ansible is not running a package, or it's not just a layer on top of a bash command, right? It's doing something more. It has a logic in it. The module has abstracted away a lot of details for you from, in this case, from installing packages, but there are many, each module abstract away other details. So this is in line with Ansible. You don't say how you want to achieve the state of your task. You just say what the final state of your system is, and the task will take care of that for you, if that makes sense. And as a final trick, I want to show you something that is very cool, which is Ansible have, actually, as you already may have noticed, it has asynchronous execution. So you are not running one after the other. You are actually running with a certain level of simultaneously execution of parallelism. So if I don't put -F for forks, so there is a flag called -F for forks, and what by default you always execute against 5 forks. What it means is it runs each task on 5 hosts simultaneously. So we don't have 5 hosts, we only have 2 in our inventory, but if we have more than 5, you will see that the operation start to take a longer time because it's doing it in batches of 5 per 5. But you can change that as long as you want. You can do 100 if you want, as long as you don't run out of file description in your system, you are fine. But in this case, I want to show you that this is true. So this is really doing it. If I don't put the -F, this is basically executing a shell command, and the shell command is sleep. So sleep 5 is sleeping for 5 seconds inside the shell. Module shell, as we already saw, Ansible module shell command that is going to be executed is sleep 5 seconds. So I'm going to put it for 3, and this will make clear that there is parallelism going on. Because right now, as you saw, 3 seconds elapsed, and suddenly you had the response from the 2 servers at the same time. So clearly, they are both executed at the same time. Now, they take 3 seconds because the task itself is taking 3 seconds, so it cannot return in the meantime. Although Ansible have a way to do that too, but let's not go there. So the Ansible, in each case, is waiting for the task to complete in order to report the status of the task. But it does so in many servers at the same time, declaring your host. So already you can see that there is some parallelism going on. But if I put -F1 for forks, this will reveal that in this moment you are serializing the execution of Ansible. It's going to go one by one in each host in our inventory file. You see that the first one responded already, and now the second one took 3 seconds. So I hope that this illustrates to you that yes, there are parallelism, and yes, you can either increase it to 100 or more, or decrease it to 1, and then basically you put it in 1, you are back to serial operations, one server after the other. Boring, but just meant to illustrate that, hey, again, Ansible have many more ways to control asynchronous execution, many more. And I put to you the link here if you want to have fun with that. But this is the most basic one to encounter this. Okay, so I hope this was kind of fun for you in the level of, if you're a beginner, you could see what Ansible can do even without trying. So this is not even the proper way to use Ansible. This is just a casual way, a very fast way to use Ansible if you have something fast that you need to execute in hundreds of machines at the same time. But it shows you the power of Ansible, and I hope also if you're a beginner that you appreciate the power of Linux itself and the things that you can accomplish with Linux, which is in the end, I would say 99% of the time, your deployment operating system would be Linux. So if you are into this area, you better familiarize yourself with the Linux operating system. I suggest that. Okay, so any questions at this point? No?
There was someone in the chat. I'm not sure we get it.
Sorry, I didn't pay attention to the chat. Let me see.
Evgeny asking, the PostgreSQL DB is the PG.
Oh, I was actually answering. Sorry, hijacking. There was a question on is the example just for the PostgreSQL, and sorry, I just jumped in.
No,
No, that's perfect. Yeah. Sorry, I because my screen, I'm following the presentation itself, and I haven't checked in the chat, but it doesn't seem to me that there is a lot of, or at least I don't know why I cannot see any except the 100 questions. So you can see my screen here. I don't see any questions. So if you have any question that you want to tell now or you want to ask now.
Scroll up a little bit. I think it just the new post which you're probably seeing. And if you scroll up a little bit, you should see it.
Could you point me out because you know it's.
Let's leave the chat alone. Does someone else want to ask a question? Ryan Young, do you want to ask a question or?
If somebody has a question, please verbalize it right now because I you know.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this will work with any like Django project. 'Cause I have a couple. Well, this kind of looks kind of fun. I want to play around with it. I have like a Django project, kind of small one I just did, so I could just deploy that, just like you kind of just got one off the website, basically.
Yes, it will work with any Django project. Now remember, it's not configured to be like your production server. It's using the Django development server. If we go back to my little attempt to make this is not as you if you put this on the internet, it would be hacked in a matter of minutes, right? So don't do it. This is just for me to if I attempted to do the complete thing, it would take me days to explain to you the reverse proxy details and all that. There is too much configuration in that. But yes, you can do that. It's just that for making it more beginner friendly, I obviated a lot of steps that you need in production for a Django application.
I have one still it's just in the non-production mode, has everything kind of. So yeah, I could probably deploy that one. I think.
Yeah. So again, sorry, this will work with your system. Obviously, you need to check the variables that I use and see that obviously. Your repository will be different than mine. The folder that you want to deploy may be different than mine. The user that you want to use for deploy may be different than mine. But again, this is details that you need to. Obviously, you need to change the inventory file to your own IPs and your own names, right? But once you do that and you change a couple of variables related to not only the inventory but the pointing to your repository, your GitHub or whatever repository, and the name of your most basic thing in your application, you should be okay. You should be able to deploy any Django application in this way.
And can we get this these slides? Would that be possible?
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you very well.
Can we get these slides just so I can go back over them? Just because I was.
Yes. You have the repositories available for you to clone.
Okay. Oh, these slides are all on the repository.
Yeah, I can. I'm not sure. I understand the.
Oh, no, your presentation that you. Is that all on the what you just went through, like of all the like
the slides? The slides are going to be available. Yes.
Okay.
And also this video, I believe Jacob would put it in the. Yeah. In the website of the group, and that you will be able to access the presentation again. I hope.
Yeah. You will find this video available probably by tomorrow, maybe a day later. It will be available on the same YouTube channel as all of the other Evening of Python Coding.
I will paste again. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure what you were asking there, but I'm going to paste again the GitHub URL there, so you can clone this and use it. The only thing I included, I think, is a GPL license. So it's a GPL licensing, so you can use it in the limits of the license of the GPL. But I think it should be okay for a demo, right? So.
Yeah. For a demo, it's good enough. GPL license is a little bit problematic, but let's talk about it afterwards.
Yeah,
never mind. It's good enough for demo purposes.
Yeah,
really.
yeah. So it's free to use as you want within the limits of this license. So it's for example, if you use this code in other things, you should publish the source code too, and you should acknowledge where it came from and all of that.
Yeah.
So, but again, this is a very basic thing. So, well, basic and not basic. So, but I think as a demo you can use it more or less pretty much freely. No big deal.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what else are we? Where were we?
I have a question about something that. Can Ansible help me do the following? I'm just running around and saying, in the past, I needed to create clusters, to large clusters.
Yeah.
So let's say, I want all the clusters, I have to deploy multiple machines, and all of them will use the same network file system. So basically, I need to kind of provision them and start some long process. Well, Ansible is a good tool for that or not?
I think it's perfect for that. Yes, I mean not only is a perfect tool for that, but you may be using Vagrant, be able to test your little cluster in a very limited way. So you may start to get into reproducibility. So if you have some weird condition that happens sometimes, which I think I talked to you a long time ago, and something happened, you may test in a limited environment. Obviously you are a little bit constrained by your RAM in your node, but within reason of the limits of RAM and that, you can do a little essay, testing of how to deploy it, and maybe cut. You can catch something going on there that you may not ever be able to diagnostic in a real production environment. Not only that, but you could have also a staging environment. So you could have your production environment in the cloud somewhere, but you could also have another staging environment that you actually deploy first there. You do some heavy testing there just to see if it can, how many requests per second can handle, what are the limits of your architecture. And then when you feel good enough with that, then you actually deploy in the real production environment. And again, this would be just folders that you put inside this inventory folder. So you will have a Vagrant folder for the Vagrant environment. You will have another for, let's say, your staging environment, and you will have another for your production environment. Mostly looking almost the same, but with different IPs for the servers that you're targeting in each deployment environment, if that makes sense. Good.
Perfect.
Good.
You explained one use case that people will know that is possible. So one more use case.
Yeah, so remember, Ansible is a lot about predictability. So it's not just, hey, I need to deploy. Yes, you can do that. But I need to deploy it in a predictable for serious thing that if something fails, I need to debug the hell out of this thing. I need to get a lot of information about why it's failing. And, I need to reach a stable. If it's a failure, it has to be a hopefully predictable failure with Ansible, right? So you can fix it in a predictable way. You don't want Heisen bugs happening in your deployment that leaves some of your infrastructure maybe up or maybe not, and you don't know about it until the last moment, right? Until the user start calling you with, hey, I don't know why I get this random error, blah blah. So Ansible will help you have this predictability that you are sure your production environment is actually doing what you believe it's doing, right? So, but yes, Jacob, sorry for the big rambling. Yes, it sounds good for your use case. Yeah.
Okay, good. Any other questions?
And if there are no questions, may I drop 5 cents from my side?
You have, let's talk about questions specifically now about Ansible. Later on, we'll stop the recording and we can talk about things other than Ansible.
That is also on Ansible use cases.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, so one probably unexpected one is actually using Ansible for your local tasks automation. And if you need to duplicate your environment when you don't have a dedicated Ansible host. So in my case, in my hobby project, I have, I'm on Windows, and I have my Linux personal project running in virtual machine. So what I did, I installed Ansible there, and I have just playbook, no fancy variables, nothing, just playbook with what needs to be done, and it sits all together with my code, which is in Python for that web app. So what I do, I just check out my code and execute Ansible locally, and it configures everything what I need. So that is really a kind of thing which I didn't see many people do, but actually I found quite a value in it. And also automating with Bash, well, it's great, but it's not very scalable. With Ansible, you then can kind of broadcast your changes all across the environment if you need, or whatever.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I actually included that as a bonus in the presentation.
Sorry.
I didn't it was too long, so I wasn't even going to mention it. But for the interested person, if you go back here, so I have an annex in the end of our presentation. If you go, it tells you how to install a Vagrant, some details about Vagrant and SSH. But so if you come here, there is something that you need to do to use a Vagrant virtual machines that I actually didn't say, and it's to because you don't have a DNS inside running, or I think you don't have a DNS running inside your local machine for this purpose. You have to add the IP, the relation between IP of the virtual machine to their network name inside your etc host file. This is the traditional way to quickly add a relationship IP name of machine. And this you don't have to do for a real production environment, because your machines, if you have them, or any environment, if you have them in the cloud, the cloud provider already have a DNS for you, which you don't need to do this, right? But here, in a quick and dirty way for your Vagrant virtual machines, you add this, right? So, but because I'm such a nice guy, I tell you, okay, you put this in the etc host file, but actually, as a bonus, I actually have a playbook here that does that for you. So if you go to this playbook, localhost IP, and blah blah, you will see how to run. That you can actually run a playbook, and I actually tell you this is called a local connection, meaning the target node is a control host. So your own machine, you're targeting your own machine that you're running Ansible in, and this is useful trick for automating setting up your development environment. So I know many people that just first thing that they have a machine, the only thing they do is check out the Ansible repository and just execute the playbook, walk for a coffee, and when they come back, they have exactly the same machine that they, were using just a second ago in some other environment and some other system, right? So thank you for that. This is definitely worth mentioning, but because we are so many details, I actually thought not to even mention in the presentation.
No. This is actually the cherry on the top of the whipped cream. I'm thinking I can actually use it for a use case of mine. So, for example, I have a Linux box that I have to run big simulations on. Now, when I do this, I have to do several things like run Dask schedule, run Dask worker that connects with Dask schedule, and not in parallel. They have to kind of be one after the other. And then I have to run my own software, which means they have to go CD. Each one of those is executed in a different terminal. And then I want to see what's going on and I have to bring in like top or htop or something or some system monitor. So all of this can be automated with Ansible?
Yes, Ansible can help you orchestrate something like a deployment. I just don't want you to use, well, you can use Ansible as you want, but I think the main use case is to deploy something, not so much as an execution, as a convoluted execution tool. Like if you need to run a job in a cluster, Ansible can do it for you. But that, I think, is a little bit outside of the main use case of Ansible. But hey, I don't see why you cannot use it like that, right? And so what I mean is there is a very fine line between deployment and managing running your software. So I don't think, yeah.
So in this case, the deployment is kind of like running the software is the type of deployment, because you deploy several things, like several actions before you actually run it. But then again, you can write scripts of your own, like a shell script that does this.
Yeah.
I just see
well,
that. Yeah.
Ansible can do all that for you. It sounds correct. The only thing I caution is that Ansible is not a fast system. It's not meant to be fast, super responsive, right? So, it's not something, if you need something very, very fast and very responsive, you may want to execute a shell script inside your target environment. So say if you have a cluster, like in the old times, there were like a Beowulf clusters was the architecture that they used. So that sounds more like a script type of thing to me. Because remember, sometimes but Ansible has a lot of flexibility. You can even let's not go there because we make this, but Ansible can help you there too. And I'm not even sure if I should tell you not to use it for orchestrating even a complex thing inside a cluster. Maybe that's the right tool for that too. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, anything? Questions going once? Questions going twice? Well, questions going 3 times. Well, I guess there are no questions. So we want to thank Alfredo. So please.
Sorry, I haven't finished, but we can leave it like this. I mean, actually, the main part of the deployed application have not even started. But sorry, I'm taking too long. Sorry.
We still thank you.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys want to continue, or if this is taking too long. We can leave it whatever you want.
No, this is going well, but I do need to thank you regardless, because you actually made a very nice presentation and people want to actually see it and learn more, and it was a very nice demo. So please make some noise, clap if you want.
Okay. So we can leave it here if you want, Jacob. We can some more time whenever you want to schedule a second part, if that's
that's good enough for now. But don't go away. What we're going to do is we're going to stop the recording. That's the only thing. Everyone here is still welcome to hang around with us. So I'm stopping the recording now. And again, Alfredo, thank you very much. But don't go away.
Sure.